Have you ever felt like your brain has a mind of its own, especially when it comes to money? Well, you're right, it does. Because today we're going to dive into this really cool idea. Your modern brain is running on some seriously ancient software. We're talking about a 200,000-year-old operating system designed for the savannah that is secretly pulling the strings on every single purchase you make.
All right, to get started, I want to tell you a simple story that leaves standard economics just completely scratching its head. And like a lot of good stories, this one starts with a beer.
So, picture this. You're on a scorching hot beach. You are incredibly thirsty. A good friend of yours offers to run and grab you an ice-cold beer, and there are two places nearby they can get it from. The only question for you is, what is the absolute most you'd be willing to pay? So, back in 1985, the economist Richard Thaler ran this exact experiment. And the results, well, they were pretty wild. On average, people were willing to pay about $2.65 for the beer if it came from the fancy hotel, but only $1.50 if it came from the rundown shack. Now hang on a second. Think about that. We're talking about the exact same beer, satisfying the exact same thirst on the exact same beach. So why on earth does the source change its value by almost double inside our heads? The answer isn't in an economics textbook. No, it's way, way older than that. It's in our evolution. See, to really get what's going on here, we have to understand this hidden two-part system our brain uses for basically every transaction. This is not some complex spreadsheet. It's a fast, simple survival guide that was forged on the ancient savannah. Okay, so the first part is what we'll call the floor. And you can think of this as the logical, stable foundation. It answers a really simple question. What is the direct physical value of this thing to me? Right? How much will it quench my thirst or keep me warm or satisfy a real, tangible need? It is all about pure utility. And then you've got the ceiling. And this is where things get interesting. This is the emotional, super volatile part of the equation. It has almost nothing to do with the item itself, but everything to do with the context of the deal. It's your brain's built-in risk detector, and it's constantly asking questions like, could I be getting cheated here? Am I going to look like a fool? Is this a bad decision that could come back to hurt me? So here's the big takeaway, right? Your brain doesn't just calculate one single price for something. It doesn't work like that. It sets up an acceptable zone of payment. It's got a bottom, which is the item's actual value, that's the floor, and a top, which is all about how much risk or pain you're willing to put up with, and that's the ceiling. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds like a neat little theory, but does it actually hold up in the real world? Well, let's put this whole floor and ceiling framework to the test against four of the most famous, most baffling puzzles in all of consumer psychology. First up, we've got the legendary endowment effect. This comes from a famous 1990 study by Kahneman, Knecht, and Thaler. And what they did was so simple but so brilliant. They gave half the people in a room a plain old coffee mug. Then they asked them how much they'd sell it for. The other half, who didn't get a mug, were just asked how much they'd be willing to pay for one. And boom! The results just pop right off the page, don't they? The owners demanded on average $7 to part with their mug. But the buyers, they were only willing to pay $3.50 for the exact same item. The floor, the mug's actual usefulness, is the same for everybody. But for the owners, the ceiling, for the pain of losing something they already possess, is way, way higher. Our ancient brain sees loss as a catastrophic threat. All right, puzzle number 2 is, honestly, it's even weirder. In 2003, a researcher named Dan Ariely asked people to do something strange. First, write down the last 2 digits of their social security number. Then, bid on items like a bottle of wine. I mean, it's a completely random, meaningless number. What on earth could happen? The results were just mind-blowing. The people with higher social security digits bid up to 100% more for the exact same wine. And you have to ask why. It's because in a world without price tags, like the savannah, our brain is desperately scrambling for any clue to set that ceiling. So that totally random number, even though it's irrelevant, gets hijacked and used as an anchor for what a reasonable price might be. It's wild. Let's keep going. Puzzle number 3. Imagine this scenario. You're heading into a theater. In one version, you realize you've lost the $10 ticket you already bought. In another version, you lose a $10 bill on your way to buy the ticket. Now, in both cases, you're down $10. So do you still buy a ticket? And just look at that difference. It's huge. Nearly 90% of people will still buy the ticket after losing the cash, but less than half are willing to replace a lost ticket. So what's going on?
The floor, the value of seeing the show, is identical in both cases. But losing the ticket makes buying another one feel like you're paying $20 from your entertainment mental account. And that price just smashes right through the ceiling for that experience, and suddenly the deal feels really, really painful. And that brings us to our final puzzle, and it's all about the almost magical, irresistible power of the word free. Researchers offered people a choice: a delicious, high-end Lindt truffle for 15 cents or a basic Hershey's Kiss for just 1 cent. And no surprise, most people chose the superior Lindt chocolate. But then they made one tiny little change. They dropped both prices by just 1 single cent. The Lindt was now 14 cents, and the Hershey's Kiss was free. And bam, suddenly everyone stampeded for the free, inferior chocolate. So what just happened? The word free completely deactivates our brain's cheater detection system. If there's zero cost, there's zero risk of getting ripped off. The ceiling doesn't just get lower, it completely vanishes. So it's pretty clear that all these strange behaviors are driven by the ceiling. But what is this ceiling really protecting us from? Well, it all comes down to a handful of ancient, hardwired survival motives that are pretty much always running in the background. So your brain, your ancient brain, is constantly trying to do these 4 things. It's trying to avoid catastrophic loss, because losing just hurts so much more than winning feels good. It's trying to protect your status, so you don't look like a fool to the rest of the tribe. It's always trying to detect cheaters to make sure every exchange is fair. And believe it or not, it's even trying to avoid disease by being really wary of sketchy sources. These are the ancient goals that are setting your price ceiling. Okay, so we've pretty much established that we're all walking around with Stone Age software in our heads, which is, fascinating. But the real question is, what can we do about it? Let's turn all this ancient knowledge into a practical tool that you can actually use every day. So, next time you're making a decision, try these 3 simple steps. First, when you're hesitating on a price, consciously separate the floor from the ceiling. Ask yourself, am I worried about the item's actual value, or am I just reacting to the context of the deal? Second, whenever something is free, just slow down, take a breath, remember that your brain's risk detection system is completely offline. Is this something you actually want? And finally, start to notice the endowment effect in yourself. That inflated price you feel when you're thinking about selling something, that's not the item's true worth. It's just your brain's ancient, powerful hatred of loss kicking in. And that brings us to the most important takeaway from all of this. We're not broken. We're not irrational. Our brains aren't making mistakes. All of these so-called biases are actually highly evolved features that worked perfectly for 200,000 years in a world that was very, very different from our own. And you know what? That is incredibly empowering. Because once you get this simple, ancient logic of the floor and the ceiling, human behavior stops being this big mystery. It actually becomes predictable. And when you can predict these impulses both in yourself and in others, you are no longer controlled by them. You're in charge.